Good afternoon and welcome to EPTV Live. First of all, apologies, we have been delayed 10 minutes because we've had a few technical issues, but here we are. And where are we going today? Well, on EPTV Live today, we're off to headquarters, to Newmarket. And I'm delighted to be joined by two leading flat jockeys in Luke Morris and Harry Bentley. Good afternoon, Luke and Harry. How are you both?
I'm
very well, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, of course, you two guys, you can't eat, but you've got to keep running and keeping getting fit. So how are you doing that? Luke, what's your routine at the moment?
I've kind of got a little bit obsessed with the Strava app, to be honest, and I've set myself a target of running 20 miles a week, and I've recently took up cycling as well, so I'm kind of trying to do 50 miles a week cycling. So thankfully I've been kind of smashing through that lately, and the cycling bug's starting to kind of hit now. So I'm kind of trying to embrace this time off rather than kind of sitting bored and kind of dwell on it, really.
And Luke, of course, with the Strava app, people can follow you, can't they? And you can follow other people.
Yeah, like I say, it's a great app to see what you know, some of the other guys are getting up to, and like I say, I think it's kind of quite a healthy competition, seeing who can complete the 10k, 5k, whatever in the quickest time. So it's almost keeping that competitive spirit kind of fighting inside you a little bit.
And Harry, if the information that got to me correctly, two bicycles turned up at a similar time, because you've got one as well, haven't you?
I have, yeah. I mean, it's a great sort of hobby to get into, especially with the weather at the moment being so good. We're lucky to live in an area which is, we don't have to hit major roads, and the roads, obviously, with what's going on, are incredibly quiet. So it seems a perfect hobby to have taken up, and also it's a great way to keep fit in these times. I mean, we don't know when racing's going to return, so it's very important for us to keep up and maintain a level of fitness. And that seems a perfect way to do it. I mean, unlike Luke is sort of a mad runner, and he's very good at it, whereas I'm not too keen on it myself. And I find the cycling a lot sort of better way of keeping that fitness up.
Do you both go out together on bikes, obviously keeping 2 meters apart, whatever?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Well, I mean, and it's the perfect thing, because you don't have to be, you know, I suppose it's like riding out in a string. You don't have to be right next to each other and what have you. So we're able to do those and keep within the sort of conditions of not being too close.
But so does Luke have to wait for you, Harry, or can you keep up with him?
No, we're actually quite level, to be honest. We keep up with each other. We're doing.
I've got to start.
We went out for a long
Sorry,
time.
Harry.
I think we ended up doing sort of about 35 miles yesterday. So we went out on a good old cycle, and no, we're actually quite level. So there's a good bit of competition there, but at least we're not too far apart.
And Luke, stable jockey to Sir Mark Prescott, one of the most acknowledged racehorse trainers, in fact the longest serving racehorse trainer in headquarters. Are you riding out much there? You getting in there 2 or 3 times a week?
Yeah, I'm in St Mark's on a Tuesday and a Friday, and like I say, it's more just kind of keeping horses ticking over now, ready for when obviously the green light, you know, comes and we get the go ahead. But it's good just to get to know some of the 2-year-olds, some of the youngsters, and like I say, get a feel for them, and you know, hopefully we look to have a nice team for the year going ahead.
And on the different areas of gallops in Newmarket, how are they handling the social distancing and things? Is that all working out quite well, settled into a routine now? Yeah,
like I say, the guys at the Jockey Club estates and all the stable staff there, I think they're very, very conscious of obviously public health, and like I say, a lot of the big strings, John Ghazala, etc., they're going out in kind of small branches, and obviously keeping the 2 meters apart at all time. And like I say, I think everyone's kind of handled the situation brilliantly well, and like I say, I think everyone's conscious that like I say, the last thing we want to do is you know, get properly locked down where the horses can't go out. So I think everyone's handled the situation fantastically well.
And you two guys are obviously in constant contact with the BHA. There's no news at the moment, Harry, is there at all? There's no sort of indication of starting?
Sorry, I lost you there, Philip. Sorry.
I'm just going to say you're in touch with the BHA, both of you, constantly, or they're in touch with you. At the moment, it's just they're not actually giving any information at the moment. They can't, of course, can they? Are you not hearing me, Harry?
Yeah, no, sorry, it keeps on freezing just right at the last minute. I mean, sorry, I've got the gist of sort of what you're saying. I mean, we're constantly updated from the BHA and also PJA with which is obviously our sort of trade union, as it were, and they sort of constantly keeping us updated on what's going on, and we haven't been given any sort of set parameters or what have you when this could potentially come into racing, because by the sounds of it, any racing that starts is going to be behind closed doors. I mean, I think we all know that that's going to be the case, and the sooner that happens, the better. I mean, clearly we can operate without any crowds. That's not a problem at all. But it's just making sure that everything, and especially sort of ambulance crews being on hand. When I think the rules are that they need two ambulance teams are there at any time. So obviously taking those sorts of people away from the front line and NHS and obviously very important things they're doing, then once they can sort of work that out, then I think racing, that's when it will probably resume. But until they sort of get a more of an idea on how that they can keep everyone apart and keep social distancing, sort of keep those parameters up, then that's when we'll have an idea.
Luke, you're acknowledged. I think you've been labelled the hardest working jockey with your extraordinary amount of rides, which now regularly hits 1,500 a year. Just how many miles do you drive a year, Luke?
I'd be kind of clocking up around 80,000 a year. Like I say, I'm lucky in that I have a chap that drives me around, 95% of the time, and it kind of takes a strain away, to be honest, because I feel that I wouldn't be able to maintain that level of kind of work shift, as well as obviously maintaining weight without having certain people just to obviously help keep the ball rolling. But so I enjoy being busy, and like I say, it's that hunger and that drive still kind of burns to keep striving, to keep going forwards, really.
Of course, Harry isn't able to cope with the English winters, as you know, Luke. He can't put up with all this cold and wet. But travelling around the all-weather courses throughout those dark mornings and dark evenings, you must have some drive to do that day in and day out.
Yeah, like I say, when you're getting lots of rides and riding sort of plenty of winners, which through the winter, I'd be very, very busy and riding plenty of winners. It just makes them days a little bit brighter, and it just kind of gives you that hunger to almost want to be, to want to be the number one through them winter months. So like I say, that kind of carrot where you can be sort of number one through the winter, it just kind of spurs you on a little bit more, really.
Harry, I don't know whether you've experienced many winters recently, but we have rain here and frozen temperatures. Did you know that?
Sorry, Philip, I lost you again.
Oh,
right.
I just say, Harry, it rains here in the winter and it gets quite cold.
Yeah.
But you've probably
So I've been told. No, so I've been told. I mean, I'm what I like to sort of regard myself as a fair weather jockey. I've been very spoilt over the last 10 years now, 10 winters. I mean, since I started, I'm going into my 11th season riding, race riding, and I've never actually done a winter on the all-weather. Somehow I've avoided doing it, but ever since I was apprentice, a £7 claimer, I went away to Dubai, and I enjoyed it so much and have had a good time, and have built up the contacts over the year that it's meant that I've returned each season, and it's been a great place to me. I mean, I think I know anyone would agree with me. Luke has got an unbelievable drive when it comes to, well, anything really, whether it be sort of with his running or his race riding. He's just got that sort of attitude where he can really dig deep, and I really take my hat off to that, because it is tough, and the winters, so I hear, are very, very hard here and very long. And as you mentioned, the nights, it sort of gets dark at 4 or 5 o'clock. So you're always returning. You're sort of going to work in the dark and you're coming home in the dark, and that sort of must take its toll. So, but going back to me, I've been very lucky. I've had a really great time out in the Middle East, whether that be Dubai or Qatar, and hopefully can continue doing so. And whilst I've got no ties and no family to hold me back, then I will keep doing the same.
And so, Harry, when you're sitting on Jumeirah Beach with a pina colada in the evening, do you think about Luke?
Well, I often look at the result. Obviously, with the Racing Post app, it's just so available. You can look anywhere and see what's going on. And I'll obviously look and see sort of Newcastle, and Luke's up there, and which is a long old way from Newmarket. It's a very, very long way, and he can be up there sort of 3 times a week. So I can look at results and see Newmarket-based jockeys or what have you up there, and I think, crikey, I'm in the right place here. And yeah, my heart goes out to those guys.
Just one other question about the Middle East, Harry. You experienced the first ever, the inaugural running of the Saudi Cup this year. You were riding at the meeting. What was that like?
It was amazing. I mean, obviously, they are putting on an incredible spectacle with the richest race in the world, and they've gone from not putting on this international meeting to all of a sudden hosting the world's richest race, which is no mean feat. With anything sort of starting out, there are a few things which they'll iron out, but the whole thing was actually very, very good. The track was in great condition. I had one ride on the night, and I only rode on the dirt surface, but that always rides fantastically well. But by all accounts, the turf also was incredibly good, and considering they had a very short amount of time to sort that out, they did an amazing job, and I can see it sort of year on year getting better and better. But it was an amazing spectacle, great to be a part of. And hopefully I can sort of return again next year.
There were no pina coladas there that night, I understand.
No pina coladas at all. No, not a drop in sight. We were all, because a lot of us came from Dubai, so it was very sort of a short in and out sort of job, because the flights are so good from Dubai. We were able to get there sort of 10 o'clock in the morning and leave at about 9:30 at night. So it was just one of those days that seemed to sort of flash past. But I think when you only had to look at the race card to all the not only the horses taking part, because the main Saudi Cup race was effectively the best sort of dirt race you could really dream up. Had the best dirt horses from America coming over, and certainly with the likes of Ben Battle from the UAE coming over, it was an incredibly strong race. But also looking just at the jockeys taking part from all over the world. I've said before, it was amazing to take part. But it really was, when you're sort of on the same race card as those sort of guys. It was really good, really, really good.
And you've both been fortunate enough to ride Group 1s. Harry, your famous association with Lamato, but Luke, you've had 2 great fillies with Luke 1s. And just when we get to this stage of this program, just to let people know that you can ask questions live actually on YouTube if you're watching. And Luke, there's actually a question come in from somebody else called Luke, from Luke O'Neill from Ballymore Eustace. He's put a question to you, Luke. Gilt Edge Girl and Marcia were both 4-year-old 5 furlong Group 1 winning mares for you. Did they have many common attributes?
To be honest, they were literally chalk and cheese as fillies go, really, and as horses go. Marcia was a very kind of explosive. She had a fantastic turn of foot, and she was a big kind of rangy, scopy filly. Whereas Gilt Edge Girl, she probably wasn't the most the best to look at. She was quite small. She was probably a limited ability in the start of her career, but she took a kind of sudden rise to obviously Group 1 level, and she was just a real tough, gritty kind of dour, fighter, really. And I think that's what rose her from handicapper to Group 1 level, whereas Marcia was probably a bit more of a a kind of almost a Messi or a Ronaldo type kind of character, really. She was classy, and she had a huge amount of talent.
And did you ride both those horses as mares before they actually raced? Were you riding them out at home?
No, I rode obviously Marsha from literally the moment she went to St Mark's, but Gilt Edge Girl, I think I got on her one day around Wolverhampton, and in a middle of the road handicap she got beat, and she was a funny filly. She just kind of gradually stepped up through the handicap ranks to listed Group 3, and then she had a day in a Group 1. I think she was 33-1 or something, and it was probably a shock to most people, but it was one of them things where she was a real tough fighter, and like I say, everything went perfect on the day for her, and she was retired after the race.
And of course, with Marsha, the sale ring made history as well, of course, after that.
No, exactly. That was I went there on the evening when she sold, and so it's one of their moments where I don't think I'll ever experience a moment like it. She was walking around the ring, I think the clock was ticking, and the money was going in. She was coming up to 6 million, and you literally could not hear a pin drop in the ring. It was quite a euphoric moment, and so it was fantastic to be associated with such a talented mare.
And it was great for Luke. Obviously, she sold for record money, and as a nice prize that they gave Luke a photo.
I was just going to ask. They haven't brought in the rule yet that the jockeys get 10% of the sale value, have they?
Yeah.
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. But there's a nice photo of her going around the sales ring in my gym.
Luke O'Neill has also, Harry, got a question for you. You rode some very good horses last year, like Feliciano de Vega, Max Vega, Curious, Hereby, and of course Biometric at Royal Ascot.
Yeah.
Do you think that any of these could be a Group 1 level horse?
Yeah, I really do actually. I think Feliciana de Vega definitely has the credentials to be a Group 1 filly. She won on Future Champions Day towards the back end of the season at Newmarket last year, a Group 3, and she won that very, very well. But she's an incredibly light race filly. I mean, she's only 4 years old, and she's had 5 runs, so she's got very limited mileage on the clock, and a huge amount of potential. So I can see her definitely building into a Group 1 level performer. Hereby is very she's incredibly solid, but such a gutsy filly, and she's another one that, I mean, she went from being like she was going to be a very limited level handicapper, and Rafe sort of didn't even expect her to win a race. He said, yeah, I only found that out actually when she went and won a listed race at Ascot last season, and he sort of couldn't believe what she'd become from where she sort of started. So she's very much climbing the ranks. Whether or not she's quite Group 1 level, I'm not so sure, but can see her in group company.
Luke, just picking up on something Harry's just said about Hereby, do you have that experience sometimes when you get on a horse on a race course that you know because you've ridden it at home or know of it, and it surprises you? Do you think, crikey, I wasn't expecting to find this engine? Yeah,
especially with a lot of Smarks horses. A lot of Smarks horses, they're obviously they're, when they race at 2, they're kind of quite big, gangly, weak horses, and they do need a lot of time. And like I say, they don't show a huge amount at 2, but suddenly they get to a race course when they're free, and like I say, they're off a lowly mark, and you wouldn't think they were the same animal, but say the amount of horses that some marks that have rose from marks in the 50s to up to 100, there's been numerous of them. Palisades have been in particular, and plenty of others. So so that that does happen quite often with certain stables.
If I can touch on that as well, I know numerous horses, and one to pick out would be sort of Antonia de Vega from last season. She absolutely shows even to this day, she shows nothing at home, but then performs at Group 1 level, which is, she hasn't won a Group 1 yet, but she's certainly in that bracket. And it's amazing to think, you sort of think your radar's a bit wrong, because as jockeys, that's half our job, is knowing what we're riding in the mornings and what potential they could have. And there are the odd ones you can ride in the mornings, and you think, how can this be sort of at the level it or have the mark it is. So it's some of them do really take you by surprise.
There's an email coming from Gary to Luke, or to both of you, but Luke, just to answer this, do you feel added pressure when riding a heavily backed favourite? And do owners ever tell you they've had a big bet?
Personally, in terms of if the horse is favourite, I wouldn't really have too much pressure, because at the end of the day, it's just, you know, in my eyes, it's another race. If it's a Group 1, if it's a maiden, whatever, you're going out there to do the same job, whether it's, you know, 16 to 1 or even money favourite. But like I say, sometimes the odd time an owner might say to you, oh, you know, we've had a good bet on this today, etc. But you know, that doesn't happen very often. I don't feel in this day and age too much.
No. Harry, do you feel extra pressure on well-backed horses?
Day to day, no. I'd have to say no. I would agree with Luke that it's just you're going out and doing the same job if you were on a 33 to 1 shot or a short favourite. So I don't think that changes. I think if you're going into, well, talking from my point of view, if I was going into a Group 1 and you're hot favourite, then personally I would find there's a bit more on you, because there's far more to lose. So I think natural, you sort of, I don't know, naturally I think you just feel that little bit more pressure, but day to day, not at all.
Luke, I want to ask you both a little bit about agents, because I always think that they're sort of the backroom boys that don't get a lot of exposure, and they're doing so much for you. Luke, your agent is it Neil Allen, your agent?
Yeah, Neil Allen's my agent. I've actually been with him.
Sorry, carry on.
No, I was going to say I've been with him since I you know, basically started out as apprentice. So we've become very good friends, as well as generally just work colleagues. And
the relationship between an agent and a jockey that's riding at the levels that you two are riding at, I mean, you know, basically they run your lives, don't they?
Yeah, like I say, I could speak to my agent, you know, through the season more than any other person, to be honest. You know, we'd be on the phone in the morning when, you know, I might have ridden out, and I might say to him, you know, follow this horse, whatever, we need to make sure we get on this horse, or, you know, we'll be discussing plans on where we're going to go racing, and then, you know, I'll speak through the day and after racing to discuss like say the upcoming rides for the later on the week. But say having a good agent is you know, I think it's one of these things that it's massively underestimated, really, and having that relationship with your agent who understands, you know, the person you are. Like say my agent's a very hardworking, very hungry guy, which is very similar to me. So we kind of bounce off each other and work very well together.
And are the agents talking to the trainers a lot, all the time?
Like the agents will be in touch with the trainers and the you know, the trainer secretaries on a daily basis to find out, obviously, running plans, and, you know, if a horse isn't going to run because of the ground, etc. So so they've got to be on the ball, and they've got to have very good relationships with the trainers to obviously keep everyone in sync.
Mm. And Harry, yours is Paul Clark. Just looking at my notes.
Yep.
Similar situation that Luke was saying for you.
Completely similar. I mean, it's a relationship which is vitally important for your career and the trajectory it follows. And I would totally agree with Luke that getting an agent that sort of fits your, I suppose, not only your work ethic, but just you as a person is vitally important, because you're talking to them so often. They have to have a fine balance, though, because as Luke mentions, they're ringing offices, whether they're speaking to the trainer or the racing secretary. They have to be, on one hand, kind of pushy and a little bit aggressive to try and get on those horses, but at the same time, they can't upset the balance and be overly so, because then the phone's going to ring. They're going to be either the trainer or the secretary is going to see who's ringing and think, you know what, I'm not really in the mood for this. So there's a fine balance to take, and making sure your agent sort of that knows that and how to handle each trainer in particular is so important. But I feel like Paul Clark, my agent, who I've had for, I'm not sure now, maybe 5 or 6 years, has done a great job for me. And what I think's great is he's not the sort of person that would sort of send me up to Newcastle or Thirsk just for the sake of going, whereas some really would, but he kind of likes to protect me in that way and not overdo things, because the season really is a slog, and if you start going to too many places unnecessarily, if they're not good enough rides, and you'll soon know it by the end of the season.
Luke, just listening to Harry there, your agent is vitally important. It's quite fragile, isn't it? Because they can affect your relationship with your trainers if they got it wrong.
No, absolutely. Obviously, you know, if agents are too pushy, etc., you know, they can upset the trainers and the racing secretaries. And like say, you know, it's a fine balance between obviously, as Harry said, having that you know, that bit where you're pushing for rides, and obviously you're upsetting owners and trainers, etc. So, and you know, a lot of things some people don't understand also is you know, plans change last minute with horses, jockeys, etc. And it's kind of being, you know, delivering the bad news, whatever, at the right time and in the right frame of mind as well. So, you know, it's vitally important to have an agent who can like say conduct themselves well with, you know, the trainers, etc.
Well, let's just look forward to the resumption of racing. Harry, what horses are you particularly looking forward to riding this year?
I've got a few actually, which I'm really looking forward to. So Max Vega would be one. He won the Zetland again on same as Feliciano, actually won on Future Champions Day. He won Group 3 Zetland, which is often sort of touted to be a bit sort of a stepping stone for a potential Derby horse. So he's one that I'm not sure when the Derby's going to be run, but he is definitely one that would potentially aim for the Derby whenever that might be. He's not the biggest of sorts, but he's certainly got the ability and hopefully win the right course. Feliciana de Vega, who we mentioned earlier, she potentially could be into a sort of Group 1 performer this season. Another one would have to be Kinross, who he's very, very exciting because he won his a novice at Newmarket, first time out by 8 lengths, which is no mean feat, especially somewhere like Newmarket where those races are so competitive, top trainers taking part. So he then went on to run in the Futurity Stakes, which was held at Newcastle because it got abandoned at Doncaster because of, I think, waterlogging. So he finished 5th that day. I think he ended up being favourite in a Group 1 on his second start, but things didn't quite go to plan that day. Perhaps experience got the better of him, but this year, I know he's working well at home. I haven't sat on him yet, but he's very, very exciting. He would have been a Guineas horse, but whatever they do with the Guineas now, I'm not sure, but he's certainly very exciting horse.
And what about you, Luke? Have you got any that you're particularly looking forward to getting on the track?
At St Mark's, we're probably lacking a superstar going forwards this year, but we've a nice filly called Alpinista. She won quite nicely at Epsom first time. I know her target going forward this year was to aim to run the Oaks. She wasn't beaten far in a Group 3 in France last year, and you know, I've seen her this year. She looks to have done well, and you know, you'd be hopeful she's a filly that can make her mark in group company this year. And you know, there are a few others in the yards. Miss Celestial was multiple listed place. There should be you know, operating at a decent level, and also a horse called Land of Oz, who I think he won 6 from 7 last year. So you know, he rose the ranks quite well last year, and he went off nearly favourite for the Cesarewitch. So you know, I'd be hopeful he could you know, he could make his mark in, you know, top handicap company, or if not, he might just be shaving onto that kind of pattern level. So you know, there's a few in there, and also, you know, I'd be hopeful there's a few handicappers that are kind of lurking off good marks, you know, for the year ahead.
So for you guys, for the next, well, whatever it is, week or two, it's eating properly and banging away at that Strava app, is it? That's the.
For me, it's it'll probably entail a lot of cycling, bit of riding out, just trying to keep active, and as you say, I mean, we do have to obviously watch our weight, because I mean, I'm very lucky, and I think Luke is the same. With his weight's very good, so we're able to not have to worry as much as a lot of the guys, but even so, really have to keep an eye on things and make sure don't get too carried away for when things do come back.
Well, we've just got one one quick question that's come in before we wrap up from Florence. What's the most nervous you've ever been before a big race?
I can actually answer that straight away. I know mine. So I was, I remember it was actually Lamato. He had won the July Cup, and then his next target was in the Prix de la Forêt when it was actually at Chantilly. Longchamp was being sort of constructed and done up. But I was in, I think it was the last race of the day, and I'd been there on the Saturday, and then I got to the races because the race was on Sunday. I got there obviously because I wanted to watch all the top racing, the Arc and what have you. So I just remember being at the races all day, and he was evens for odds on favourite for a Group 1, and I just knew it was all at my mercy. And it was just, it was one of those days it just took forever to pass, but luckily it ended well anyway. He won.
Absolutely. What about you, Luke? Any memorable occasions when you've been very nervous?
I think it was when it'd been my first year out of my claim. I was riding a horse called Balthazar's Gift. He was running a Group 1 in Canada, and I'd never ridden a horse before. I'd never ridden around Woodbine, and he was favourite for the race. And like I say, it was a very warm race. On the day, I think he actually bled, so he didn't run too well. But obviously, it was my first year out of my claim. It was one of my first rides abroad, and I'm riding a favourite for Group 1 in Canada. So it was quite nerve-wracking. It wasn't to be, but I think a couple of weeks later, then Gilt Edge Girl went and won the Abbey. So it all worked out in the end. But I remember it was quite a nerve-wracking experience, kind of, riding. I was only young, and it's quite a big opportunity on a big stage.
Well, thank you very much indeed, guys. We haven't got time. There are a few more questions there, but we're going to give it a wrap up and let you guys get outside. Luke Morris, Harry Bentley, the best of luck for whatever happens the rest of the season. And thank you very much indeed for joining us live on EPTV. Have a great afternoon, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.